My name is Fahad, and today I am going to share a story from my life that taught me a lesson I will never forget. It taught me that you should never help anyone without thinking carefully. That act of kindness could become the last mistake of your life. This was an experience that I cannot forget for the rest of my life. So let me begin the story. This story takes us back to last year, when I was traveling alone from Karachi to Multan in my car. That night, that road, and everything that happened still sends shivers down my spine to this day. It was around 2:00 a.m. and I had increased my speed on the highway. Complete darkness surrounded me on all sides, and that particular stretch of the national highway was completely deserted. On both sides, there were dense forests and old graves scattered about. There was silence in the air. The only sounds I could hear were the hum of my car's engine and the friction of the tires against the road. I was feeling tired and sleepy, and my eyes were stinging slightly. That's why I had kept my speed at 80 kilometers per hour so that I wouldn't fall asleep. Suddenly, in the bright beam of my headlights, I saw a person standing on the side of the road. He was wearing an old, dirty brown coat, and on his feet were heavy, old-fashioned shoes. Despite the exhaustion in his eyes, there was a strange glimmer of hope. He was gesturing for a lift with his hand, and his faint voice sounded like the call of a lost soul. I thought that in such a deserted place, perhaps he was waiting for someone to help him. But then I thought, who could this be at this time of night in this cold weather? Still, looking at his condition, I felt that helping a helpless person is part of humanity. So I stopped the car and unlocked the door from the dashboard. The man slowly approached the car and, without saying a word, opened the door and silently sat down on the passenger seat. As soon as he closed the door, I felt as if the temperature inside the car had suddenly dropped by 10 degrees. A strange smell was emanating from his body, a mix of wet soil and old, withered rose petals. The smell penetrated deep inside me, as if it was there to make my hair stand on end. I looked at him and asked, "Brother, where do you need to go?" But he gave no answer. He just placed his bag on his lap and stared outside. His silence was making me uncomfortable. I started driving, but now his quietness was beginning to frighten me. About 15 minutes passed, and he remained exactly as he was, as if someone had turned him into stone. I thought, perhaps he was lost in deep thought. So I tried to turn on the radio to break the silence. But the radio only produced static noise. That noise made me feel even more uneasy. Then, out of habit, I glanced at the side mirror to see if any car was coming from behind. But what I saw was something else entirely. In the side mirror, I saw my seat, but when my gaze shifted to the passenger seat, it was empty. I turned my neck and looked beside me. The man was still there. His coat, his torn sleeve, his hair, everything was exactly as it had been before. But in the mirror there was no trace of him. It was as if he simply did not exist in that reflection. My soul trembled. I could feel the fear building up inside me. Suddenly, my heartbeat quickened, as if it was about to burst out of my chest. My heart was pounding so fast that I felt my ribs might break. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the mirror again, hoping that perhaps it was just the effect of my exhaustion. But the terrifying truth was right there. The man was there, but his reflection was not in the mirror. I still couldn't understand what this was. I gathered my courage and pressed the cabin light button again. But as soon as I pressed it, the bulb burst with a loud pop, and the explosion shook me to my very soul. Small pieces of glass fell into my lap. The man now began to slowly turn toward me. Fearfully, I looked at the road ahead, and a scream escaped my lips. In the beam of the headlights, there were hundreds of the same man standing in the middle of the road, all looking exactly like the one sitting beside me in the car. I was now completely overwhelmed by panic and fear. So much fear had filled me that as soon as I pressed the brakes, the car suddenly swerved and veered off the road, crashing into an old tree. Everything happened in an instant. When I regained consciousness, I saw that the passenger seat was empty. The door was locked, but on the seat there was ice-cold water and some soil. I was sure that I hadn't imagined all of this, but still, the smell, the fear I had felt, the glass pieces, everything made that moment even more terrifying. Now, whenever I look in the side mirror, I'm afraid that I might see that empty seat again. Was he a ghost? Or was that man from that night just playing a trick on me in return for my help? Did he come just to frighten me, or was there something more? These questions will always remain in my mind, and perhaps I will never find the answers. Friends, this story is not just a scary tale. It is also a warning. Never help a stranger without thinking. You don't know who they are, where they come from, or what they want. That night changed me in ways I still cannot fully comprehend. Before that experience, I was a practical man who believed in the tangible world. I had heard stories of supernatural encounters, of ghosts and spirits, but I always dismissed them as folklore or the exaggerations of overactive imaginations. I believed that everything had a logical explanation, that there was a rational reason behind every phenomenon. But what happened on that deserted highway shattered my worldview completely. The days following the incident were filled with anxiety and fear. I couldn't sleep properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see that man's face, his hollow eyes, and the way he had slowly turned toward me. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced that I could smell that strange mixture of wet soil and withered roses. I started avoiding driving at night altogether. Even during the day, I would feel uneasy whenever I passed a hitchhiker on the road. I would grip the steering wheel tightly and accelerate, never stopping to offer help again. My family noticed the change in me. My mother asked me repeatedly what had happened, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. How could I explain that I had picked up a ghost? How could I tell her that I had seen hundreds of the same man standing in the middle of the road? She would have thought I had lost my mind. So I kept the secret to myself, carrying the burden of that night alone. It was a heavy burden, one that weighed on my soul and made me question my sanity. I began researching similar stories online. I discovered that many people had reported similar experiences on deserted highways at night. Some spoke of picking up hitchhikers who vanished without a trace. Others told of passengers who had no reflection in mirrors. The stories were chillingly similar to mine. I realized that I was not alone in this experience. There were others who had encountered the same inexplicable phenomenon. Some claimed it was the spirit of a traveler who had died on that road and was still searching for a ride home. Others believed it was a jinn testing the kindness of strangers. Whatever it was, it had left an indelible mark on my psyche. I also learned that the road between Karachi and Multan has a dark history. It passes through areas that are sparsely populated, with stretches of wilderness that have been the site of many fatal accidents over the years. Some say that the souls of those who died on that road still wander, looking for closure. Others whisper that the area is a gathering place for malevolent spirits that prey on unsuspecting travelers. I don't know which of these theories is true. All I know is what I experienced with my own eyes and felt with my own body. The physical evidence of that night was undeniable. The broken glass from the cabin light was still in my car. The wet spot on the passenger seat had left a stain that I could never fully clean. The smell, though faint, would occasionally return, especially on cold, foggy nights. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, that the stress of the journey had caused me to hallucinate. But the evidence was there, staring me in the face, reminding me that what I had experienced was real. After several months of struggling with the memories, I finally decided to share my story with a close friend. He listened patiently, his face growing paler with each word. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. Then he told me that his uncle had experienced something similar on the same road many years ago. His uncle had picked up a hitchhiker who had vanished from the car while it was still moving. The uncle had never been the same after that. He had become paranoid and withdrawn, eventually moving to a different city to escape the memories. Hearing this was both comforting and terrifying. It comforted me to know that I wasn't alone, that others had gone through similar experiences. But it also terrified me because it confirmed that the supernatural was real, that there were forces at work in this world that we cannot explain or control. I began to pray more regularly, seeking protection from the evil that lurks in the shadows. I started reciting protective verses before every journey, especially at night. It became a ritual, a way to shield myself from the unseen. I also became more cautious in my daily life. I stopped helping strangers on the road, no matter how desperate they looked. I would drive past them, my eyes fixed on the road ahead, refusing to make eye contact. It felt cruel, and sometimes my conscience would prick me. But I would remember that night, the feeling of that cold presence in my car, and my resolve would harden. I had learned that not every plea for help comes from a place of genuine need. Sometimes it comes from a place of darkness that seeks to consume you. Today I am sharing this story with you in the hope that it serves as a warning. I am not saying that you should never help anyone. Kindness and compassion are virtues that we should all strive to cultivate. But you must be careful. You must trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if a situation seems too strange or too convenient, listen to that inner voice. It is there to protect you. The world is full of mysteries that we cannot explain. There are forces and entities that exist just beyond the veil of our perception. They are not all benevolent. Some are malevolent, waiting for an opportunity to cross the boundary between their world and ours. A simple act of kindness, like giving a lift to a stranger, could be the opening they need. I don't know who or what that man was. I don't know if he was a ghost, a jinn, or something else entirely. What I do know is that he changed my life forever. He taught me that the unseen world is real and that we must always be vigilant. He taught me that not all stories have logical explanations, and that sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones that defy reason. So, my friends, if you ever find yourself driving alone on a deserted highway in the dead of night, and you see a figure standing at the side of the road, asking for a lift, think twice. Trust your instincts. And if that figure is wearing an old brown coat with heavy old-fashioned shoes and hollow eyes, don't stop. Don't even slow down. Keep driving and don't look back. Because the consequences of stopping could be more terrifying than you can possibly imagine.